My name is Elena Ward, and the last thing I remember before everything went dark was the sound of glass breaking. Sharp, endless, like time itself shattering. We'd been arguing in the living room, sunlight bleeding through the curtains, catching dust and tension in the air. My brother's voice was louder than usual, raw with something between rage and pride. "You always think you're better than everyone," he shouted. I remember whispering back, "No, I just stopped letting you control me." That's when his hand hit my shoulder. Hard. Not a shove, not a push, an explosion. My body met the glass door and the world went white. Then silence. When I woke up, it wasn't to the sound of monitors or doctors' voices. It was to my mother's whisper. "She's awake." Her tone didn't carry joy, just guilt. I blinked against the hospital lights, the sterile hum of machines echoing in the hollow space between us. My father stood at the corner, arms crossed, avoiding my eyes. And my brother? Nowhere in sight. "How long?" I croaked, voice like broken glass. Mom's eyes filled. 3 weeks. 3 weeks gone, vanished in a blur of coma dreams and forgotten time. When I tried to move, pain bloomed down my spine. And underneath the ache, a colder truth whispered. They weren't sorry. They were scared. Dad cleared his throat. "It was an accident, Elena. He didn't mean to." I turned my head slowly, meeting his eyes for the first time. "You didn't visit once," I said softly. He looked away. Outside the hospital window, rain traced long lines down the glass, almost poetic. The same glass that once broke under me now stood between us, clearer than ever. I realized in that moment. I wasn't just waking from a coma. I was waking up from a lifetime of denial. And this time I wasn't going back to sleep. The day they brought me home, the world felt smaller. Every sound, every step, every whisper echoed through me like an old wound. Mom tried to act normal, too normal. She straightened the couch cushions, turned on the same morning talk show and said, "It'll feel like old times soon." But it didn't. Nothing did. The walls felt foreign. The smell of antiseptic still clung to my clothes. And every time I looked at that shattered glass door, now replaced with a cheap wooden frame, my breath caught. My brother Ethan didn't come downstairs. I heard his footsteps once, late that evening, pacing above me like a ghost afraid to haunt. When Dad finally mentioned him, it was with irritation, not remorse. "He needs time," he muttered. I smiled faintly. "He's had 3 weeks. At night I couldn't sleep. The dreams were too real, shards of memory replaying on loop. His face. His hand. The sound. The fall. Every time I jolted awake, the same question whispered in my chest. Why wasn't anyone angry for me? By the 4th morning I found out why. Mom was on the phone in the kitchen, her back turned. Her voice low, cautious. "She doesn't remember everything, thank God. We just have to keep it that way." The mug slipped from my hand, shattering against the tile. She turned pale, frozen. "Elena. What don't I remember?" Her silence was louder than truth. Behind her, I saw the insurance papers stacked neatly on the counter. My name circled. The coma had made them rich. It wasn't an accident. It was opportunity. And in that moment, the pain in my spine felt small compared to the one blooming in my chest. They didn't just break me. They'd cashed in on the wreckage. For the next few days I pretended not to know. I smiled at breakfast, asked about errands, let them believe the concussion had blurred my memory. It wasn't amnesia, it was strategy. At night I searched. Quietly. Methodically. Their office drawers. The kitchen cabinet where Mom kept receipts. By the 3rd night I found it. A thick envelope labeled Claim Settlement, Ward Family. Inside, hospital records, statements, a letter from the insurance adjuster. The payout was 6 figures. The signature line read Authorized by Primary Guardian Linda Ward. My hand trembled. They'd filed within 48 hours of my accident. Before the doctors even confirmed I'd live. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I'd learned that silence was stronger. The next morning I walked into the living room. Dad was reading the paper, pretending peace. Mom was rearranging flowers. The same roses from my hospital room. "Smells nice," I said. She smiled too quickly. "You're feeling better?" "Stronger," I replied. "And curious." Dad didn't look up. "About what?" I placed the envelope on the table. The sound of it landing was heavier than any slap. Mom froze mid-motion. Dad's eyes finally lifted. For a moment nobody breathed. I didn't know my life had a price, I said quietly. Mom's voice cracked. You don't understand. No, I said. I understand perfectly. You made sure my pain paid the bills. Her tears came fast, but I'd stopped believing them years ago. Dad tried to speak, but the words stumbled out like ash. It was for the family. I met his gaze, cold, unwavering. I was the family. Then I walked upstairs, every step deliberate. If I'd learned anything in that hospital bed, it was this. They only felt power when you begged. So I wouldn't beg. I'd build. That night I emailed the insurance company's fraud division, attaching copies of every document I'd found. By morning I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was the witness they never expected to wake up. The investigation started faster than I imagined. By the second week, 2 insurance agents had already visited the house. Polite smiles, crisp suits, voices too calm for what they were about to uncover. I sat on the couch watching my parents answer questions like seasoned actors. Yes, she fell, Dad said evenly. We were terrified. Tragic accident, Mom added, eyes glistening at the right moments. But they flinched when the agent turned to me. Elena, do you recall what happened that day? I nodded slowly. I remember everything. The air tightened. Mom's hand gripped the armrest. Dad cleared his throat, forced a chuckle. She's been through trauma. I remember, I said again, voice sharper now, that my brother pushed me. The agents exchanged a glance. One clicked his pen. And you're certain? Certain enough to still feel it when I breathe, I whispered. That silence, that brief, cold silence, was the sound of their story cracking. After they left, the house exploded with tension. Mom's voice was trembling, no longer rehearsed. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yeah, I said, told the truth. Dad slammed his fist on the counter. You'll ruin this family. You already did, I replied. By nightfall I was packing my bags. They didn't try to stop me this time. They just stood there, pale, cornered, afraid of the world finding out what they'd built on lies. Before I closed the door I looked back once. The same hallway where I'd fallen. The same floor where blood had stained the tiles. Only now it wasn't a place of pain, it was evidence. I left the lights on as I walked away, letting them see what guilt looks like in daylight. That night I checked my email. The agent's message blinked at the top. Investigation formally reopened. Statement verified. Expect proceedings soon. I smiled faintly. They thought they'd buried the truth under broken glass. They didn't realize I'd woken up sharp enough to cut back. It started quietly, like all scandals do. A short article in the Herald Tribune. Family under investigation for insurance misconduct following domestic injury. No names at first. No photos. Just facts. But small towns have sharp memories. By sunset, everyone knew who the Ward family was. The phone at the house wouldn't stop ringing. I knew because Mom left 7 voicemails that day, each one worse than the last. Elena, please. This will destroy us. Then later, they might take the house. And finally, whispered through tears. How could you do this to your brother? I listened to every word in silence. Because what she didn't understand was, I wasn't doing this to them. I was doing this for me. Dad's company froze his contracts within a week. Ethan's scholarship was revoked pending the investigation. Their friends stopped visiting. The same neighbors who once looked at me like a burden now looked at them like a headline. I stayed quiet. No statements, no interviews, no press. Just silence. The same weapon they'd used to erase me. When I finally saw my reflection again, really saw it, it was in the window of my new apartment. Smaller space but clean. Honest. I looked at the faint scar above my eyebrow, the one the glass left behind. It didn't make me angry anymore. It made me certain. The night the official charges were filed, I got another call, from an unknown number. When I answered, Ethan's voice cracked through static. Are you happy now? I closed my eyes. No, I said softly. But I'm finally awake. And then I hung up. Some stories don't end with apologies. Some end with truth finally being louder than excuses. 2 months later, an envelope arrived at my door. No return address, just my name written in my brother's messy handwriting. For a full minute I debated tearing it apart or burning it unopened. But curiosity is a cruel kind of courage. Inside there was only a short note. I wish I could take it back. I didn't mean to hurt you that day. I don't know how to fix what I've done. And a folded photo. Us as kids building snow forts in the yard. Before jealousy, before anger, before money. For the first time in months I felt something other than rage. It wasn't forgiveness. It was grief for the version of us that might have been. I placed the letter beside my hospital bracelet, the only thing I'd kept from that time. Both reminders of pain that no amount of money could repay. That evening I called the agent overseeing the case. "I don't want them jailed," I said quietly. "I just want the truth on record and my name cleared." There was a pause. "You're sure, Miss Ward? You have enough evidence to press charges?" "I'm sure. Some victories aren't about punishment. They're about letting go before the past turns you into what you hate." When I hung up, I felt lighter but not empty. Just done. I walked to the balcony and looked out at the city lights flickering like tiny resurrections. Somewhere below, people laughed, cars moved, life kept going. And for the first time I let it. Later, I framed that photo of us in the snow. Not as a memory but as proof. That pain can change form. That even broken glass can reflect light again. I wasn't the same girl who'd fallen through that door. I was the woman who'd walked through every lie since and survived them all. It was a rainy Thursday when the past came knocking. Literally. I opened the door to find my parents standing there, drenched, smaller somehow. They didn't look like the people who'd once run my life. They looked like ghosts who finally realized they'd been haunting the wrong person. Dad held an umbrella that did little to hide his shaking hands. Mom's eyes were swollen from crying. "Elena," she said softly, "can we come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. The air between us was thick with unspoken things. They sat on my couch, the same couch I bought with money they said I'd never earn without them. No one spoke for a full minute. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "We lost the house." I nodded. I read the filings. Mom's voice cracked. "We were wrong. About everything." I stayed quiet. "We shouldn't have blamed you. Or used your pain to fix our mistakes," she continued. Then, barely audible, "He hasn't forgiven himself." I looked at Dad. His eyes were bloodshot but not defiant. He nodded once, slow. "You were right to tell the truth. There was not an excuse. Not manipulation. Just truth." For a moment I didn't know what to do with it. I poured them tea, the same kind Mom used to make when I was little. We sat there drinking in silence. No shouting. No guilt. Just the sound of rain on the window and the quiet collapse of years of distance. When they left, Mom turned at the door. "Your brother's in rehab," she said. "He wanted to tell you himself, but he's not ready." I nodded. "Neither am I." After they drove off, I stood by the window watching the rain fade into sunlight. Forgiveness wasn't coming easy. But maybe it didn't have to, not yet. Some wounds don't close with apologies. They close with time and the choice not to reopen them. 6 months later, I stood on the cliffs outside the city. The same place I'd visited after leaving the hospital. Back then, I'd stared at the horizon wondering how a life could break so cleanly. Now the ocean wind felt different. It didn't sting. It carried peace. I'd built something small but mine. Freelance editing work, volunteer shifts at the local trauma center. Helping people find their voice after violence gave mine a reason to stay steady. Some nights, survivors would whisper, "How did you forgive them?" And I'd always answer, "I didn't. I just stopped carrying them." My parents called sometimes. Polite, careful conversations. Birthdays, whether small things. I didn't hang up, but I never reached first. That balance was enough. As for Ethan, one morning, a letter arrived from his treatment facility. No apologies. Just 4 words. "Thank you for living." I sat for a long time holding that note, realizing he wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was giving me permission to move forward. That evening I returned to the house one last time, the one with the replaced door. It was empty now, furniture covered, rooms echoing with ghosts of things we'd all done wrong. In the corner of the living room I saw one last shard of glass, so small it caught only a thread of light. I picked it up carefully and slipped it into my pocket. Not as a reminder of pain but of survival. Outside, the air smelled of rain and salt. I looked up, breathed in, and whispered to no one in particular. "You didn't break me. You opened me." And just like that, the story that began with shattering ended with stillness. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just peace, quiet, earned, and mine. I turned away from the house and walked toward the car, the horizon burning gold behind me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from what happened. I was walking into what came next.